Welcome to Voices of Adoption, where we share unique perspectives, actionable advice, and meaningful stories of birth parents, adoptees, adoptive families, and other members of the adoption community. I'm Donna Pope, Executive Director of Heart to Heart Adoptions.
And I'm Nathan Gwilliam, founder and former CEO of Adoption.com.
Together, we've been part of thousands of adoption journeys over the past 25 years, and we're so glad you're here.
Let's begin today's conversation.
Welcome to Voices of Adoptions. We're so excited to be here with Simon Benn. Simon, welcome to this podcast.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I feel so welcome, Donna. This is a treat, right? This is a treat. Looking forward to our conversation. Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about Simon. He's the creator and the host of Thriving Adoptees. The challenge is in this world right now, there's a lot of feeling of, victimization. And a lot of people feel like they've gotten the rough end of different experiences. And that sometimes happens with adoptees because so much of what they have experienced in life is out of their control. Simon has come in with a podcast of Thriving Adoptees. Let's Thrive. And this is a transformative podcast, and it's designed to help adoptees heal, grow, and thrive. Simon, I've met with him a couple of times, and he has so much empathy and empowerment. He has heartfelt conversations with adoptees. He has expert insights and inspiring stories from all around the world. Simon is actually in England, Scotland. So
England.
Yeah.
First time, yeah.
Right. And so his whole platform focuses on the emotional well-being, identity, and resilience and personal transformation of adoptees. He wants to create this safe, enriching environment for adoptees to explore their journeys. And he's known for his calm, thoughtful interviewing style. He guides guests in a way that will illuminate their hope and practical tools for healing. And so we're excited to be here with Simon. And I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about your story.
So, yeah, as Donna said, I'm in England. I'm basically halfway between London and Edinburgh. So 200 miles north of London, near York. So a lot of people have heard of York. Like you've got New York, we call Old York, we just call it York. And I live about 15 miles from there in a tiny village called Huntingdon, which hasn't even got a pub. It had a pub until 1890.
What good is it?
What good is it? Yeah, it did have a pub until something like 1890, but we didn't move until 1996. So we missed out by over 100 years on the pub. So if we want to go to the pub, it's about a mile and a half. Uh-huh. And I was adopted from Liverpool. My mum and dad collected me from an adoption agency. It was called an adoption council in those days, in early 1967. So I'm 58, coming up 59 in a couple of weeks.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And you don't remember, well, what are some of your first memories of when you were adopted?
My first memories of being a kid, making a house out of a washing machine box, like a big cardboard box. Annoying my dad by blowing a horn while he was on the phone. Thinking butter, that there was this special magical butter that was all shiny, not realizing that's just melted butter. Porridge, like oatmeal. You call it oatmeal, right? So having oatmeal and trying to get a crust on the oatmeal with the amount of sugar.
You wanted the crust on the oatmeal.
I wanted, yeah, but made out of sugar, right? So like a creme brulee, that has that.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, just childhood memories, and then. My dad's dad died when I was about 7, and I remember sharing the bad news about we called him Pop, sharing the bad news about the fact that he died. I remember sharing that bad news with my teddy bear, right? So that's the this is the teddy bear that I talk about quite a lot. So at 40, I found out that the teddy bear that I'd had since I was a kid from my birth mother, and that I knew that I was adopted, but I didn't know who had given me this teddy bear. So that brought up some stuff for me that I thought thoughts that I'd never thought before. They came out in a bit of a rush, and this idea came to me that she, my birth mother, didn't love me enough to keep me, and that this teddy bear was a consolation prize from a woman that didn't love me enough to kill me, to keep me. And as soon as I was sharing that words with a coach, counselor type lady, and she said, I'm a mum, Simon, and I don't think that would have been true. And I saw the truth in what she said. So I got at a logical level that my birth mother hadn't given me away because she didn't love me enough to keep me. And then, so I got it at one level, and then probably another 13 years later, 10, 13 years later, I got my adoption file. And in the adoption file, there was a letter from my birth mum, Pat, to the social worker who had handled my case. And reading that letter from my birth mum, I felt her pain, and I felt her love for me as a visceral, whole body experience. The tears were running down my face, and I realized that she loved me, and I realized the short-lived 10-second thought that she didn't love me enough to keep me was complete and utterly wrong. And I had a moment where I actually connected with my birth mother at a higher level. I merged with her. Her and me became one. There was no separation between us. That was a truly profound and healing moment where I felt her love for me, and I felt that she was me and I was her, and we were one.
This was with your counselor when you were talking?
This was me reading the letter. So I was talking to a counselor back in, what would that have been? 2007, about the teddy bear. And the counselor said she didn't think that the idea that I had that my birth mother didn't love me enough to keep me, she didn't think that was true. And I saw that wasn't true. And then 10 years later, I felt that wasn't. Right. I felt that wasn't true, as I felt her love for me.
You got the letter.
When I got the letter.
Where the letter was in with your papers, and you just had never seen it before.
That's right, yeah. So here in the UK, records have been opened since 1975, and you can request your adoption file. So in mine, there were all the letters from my birth mum to the agency talking about her impending arrival of me. And then there's notes from the social worker that interviewed her in 1966. And then there's letters from the social worker to my mum and dad, and from my mum and dad back to the social worker.
Let's go back to the teddy bear. So you had this teddy bear the whole time you were growing up.
I had it, yeah. I had it the whole time, and it was still in the family home, and I left it behind. I didn't. There were a few things that I didn't take with me when I moved out when I was 22, and then 18 years after I'd moved out, my mum and dad, on my 40th birthday, my mum and dad came to take me and my wife out to the pub for dinner, and brought a box of stuff that I'd forgotten behind in my in my room, and the teddy bear was in that box.
So you didn't know it was from your birth mom,
I didn't know it was from my birth mum.
and yet you had had it your whole life,
Correct. Yeah.
and it had been your confidant.
Well, in a way, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so even when you found out about your grandpa dying, that's who you went to.
Yeah, well, at 7, yeah, I was crying on my bed. Yeah.
I find it interesting that your parents didn't tell you that it was from your birth mom.
Well, my mum and dad reckon my mum reckons that she did tell me, but I don't remember that. Maybe I wasn't listening. Maybe she didn't tell me and she just misremembered. Who knows? Yeah.
Or maybe it didn't mean anything to you when she did tell you. And
Ah,
she,
yeah, I guess that's another.
yeah. So growing up, you never felt those feelings of, she didn't love me kind of
No,
feeling.
no. I never
When did
thought
you
about
ever?
my birth mum. I never thought about my birth mum. I did have, I did have feelings. I did get angry at people.
Mm,
Yeah, so I was involved in a few fights as a kid. I do remember feeling rejected by other people on
right.
a couple of occasions, uh, and being angry about that. But I didn't feel I wasn't I wasn't aware. Right, so I wasn't aware of feeling rejected by my birth mum. I didn't think about my birth mum. I've interviewed lots of adoptees, right? So Thriving Adoptees, we're on 620 odd episodes now. A lot of those have been episodes with adoptees, and a lot of those adoptees have had a lot of questions going on for them as they grew up. I didn't.
Hmm.
I didn't.
Why do you think that was? Why you didn't and yet so many others do?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm my feeling is, yeah, oh yeah, my feeling is that girl adoptees think about it more than boys. That's
Mm,
that's my take on it. But I've spoken to people who say that no, it's about Evie easy peasy. It's about the same. There's no gender difference in terms of whether people think about their birth mums or not.
but you were very close to your adopted parents, and so the that lacking, that need wasn't there.
I don't know whether to say very close. Close. I don't know. I don't have any real. I don't have any real yardsticks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have very real yardsticks, but I do think having and until I had no yardstick until I started interviewing people, and I started to realize that I'd been lucky. I'd been luckier than a lot of adoptees. A lot of I remember one particular adoptee. She said, "I felt out." She said, "I felt I'd been dropped off at the wrong house." So she felt that she didn't fit in. Um, I it wasn't all it wasn't all plain sailing as in our household, but they were my mum and dad, and that was it. It was just what was.
So I'm really curious why you decided to start your podcast, Thriving Adoptions, Thriving Adoptee.
Well, on one level, it's because I learned a load of stuff that helped me and wanted to help other people. So that stuff came up for me a while ago, probably 2011, and I tried a few different ventures. So they, the through line is happiness. So the first venture I tried was happiness for small business owners,
Mm-hmm.
and because I'd had a lot of hassle and emotional heartache running my business and learned some stuff and wanted to kind of share that.
What
So
was your business?
it was a sort of educational publishing business.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first venture was happiness for small business owners. The next venture was happiness for large businesses, corporate businesses. The next venture was happiness for kids, and then the next venture was happiness for adoptees.
Mm-hmm. And why? I'm curious why the happiness theme. I mean, all of us want
Well,
to.
yeah, exactly. So because I thought that that's what people wanted,
Uh-huh.
and because I'd had some learnings in that area, right? So I'd had a lot of ups and downs running my small business, and when I finally had a really great year, it didn't make me happy. So my antennae were up. Okay, so where's happiness going to come from? And that led me to learning some things, and I wanted to share that with others. Yeah.
So let me make sure. So you ran a small business, you ran a larger business, you're working with kids in education, and then you're working with adoptees.
So I had four. So I've had since 2011. I've had four ventures: happiness for small business owners, happiness for large businesses, happiness for kids, and the fourth one is happiness for adoptees. And I've been in that space for 5 years, and running the podcast came about through that fourth venture.
Okay, so share with us what have you learned about how happiness comes about in each of these situations?
Well, it's an inside job. We're looking outside and we're looking in the wrong place. And our natural happiness is veiled. It's hidden. It's hidden by our conditioning. It's hidden by trauma. It's hidden by our feelings. It's hidden by our beliefs that it is that it lies outside us. It's hidden by the cultural norms. So here in the UK, and I think it's pretty common in the States as well. There's this idea that there is such thing as miserable weather, or that the weather is grim, and so we're raised on this belief that somehow the external weather determines our internal weather, our happiness. So those would be some of the things that I've learned.
So you say hidden. So what you're applying there is happiness is in us. It's always there.
It's always there.
But it's hidden by the weather. It's hidden by the opinions of other people.
It's not hidden by weather. It's hidden by the belief that weather makes us unhappy.
So it's by, or even beliefs that other people make us happy.
Indeed.
So always this external thing
That's right.
is affecting us, or we're allowing to affect us.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's we wouldn't choose to be unhappy. We wouldn't choose to allow the external weather to determine our internal weather. It's not a conscious choice. It's unconscious. It's learned beliefs and learned values and what people call conditioning. So society believes, most people in the Western world believe that the outside weather determines our internal weather.
And so you say it's conditioned, and so people go about, thinking this is just who I am, this is how I feel. And you found that especially true, well, not especially, but one of the areas you found to be true was adoptees feeling, well, I'm unhappy. Where does that unhappiness come from?
Well, our trauma hides our natural happiness.
So we all go through trauma, And so we experience that trauma and we put our focus there on the trauma rather than our happiness. How does this work?
Well, I don't think we choose our focus. We just get lost in it. It's not a conscious act. We don't go life thing. We don't decide, wake up one morning and say, "Tell you what, I'm going to make myself really unhappy." But we're feeling down. We're feeling like we never. Some adoptees feel like they never fitted in with their parents, and then so uh, they get angrier and angrier about the circumstances which have led them to be living with people they don't love, that people that they don't feel like that they are similar to. Um, they have less, they don't have anything in common with them. And so the gap between them and their parents grows. And perhaps their parents aren't particularly attuned to their kids. Perhaps they're not particularly emotionally intelligent people. Perhaps they think that there's something wrong with their kids. They're wrong with their kid. And so the rift grows between them and their child. And then the kid finds other adoptees who are feeling in the same way, perhaps on social media, and so the anger and the resentment grows, and the rift grows between parent and child and adult. And then they start looking at all the dodgy practices that have, well, look at some dodgy practices that have been in adoption, and their anger grows on top of that. So what started off as relinquishment trauma is compounded by poor parenting, and then added to by anger at the system. And so the trauma grows. And that we don't want that. We don't want that. That's why we have Thriving Adoptees. That's why we have conversations like this,
Right.
to hopefully peel back the layers of trauma and get to the innate happiness underneath.
So you've mentioned three things. You've mentioned just the relinquishment trauma itself, that the fact that my birth mother placed me for adoption and no longer is with me. So there's that separation feeling. And then there's maybe I don't really connect with my adoptive family. And so there's that misfit feeling that I'm not there. And then it goes out as I grow older and I see, there's all these problems with adoption and other things. And other people have had these same experience. And so there's more generalized anger to the whole world of adoption in general.
Yes. The trauma snowballs.
Yeah. So you've talked with a lot of people who have gone through those emotions.
Yes.
How do you encourage them to turn that around?
Well, I'm trying to point to the unconditioned essence of what we are. I'm trying to peel back the layers, peel back the layers of the trauma to reveal the innate happiness within. So I am interviewing guests around those sorts of topics. I am doing trainings on that topic. I am creating positive and empowering metaphors that I believe are more accurate and hope-filled compared to this thing that we've got around the around the primal wound.
Give us an example of what one of these metaphors would be.
Okay, so my favorite metaphor for this is rock, paper, scissors. Right? So you know rock, paper, scissors, the kids game. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm suggesting here that who we truly are, our essence, our core self, our uppercase S self, who we truly are, yeah, is the rock. Right? Now, so that's the metaphor for who we are. Now, Nancy Verrier's got this primal wound metaphor. Yeah. So a wound requires, to make a wound, to cut something, you need a knife or you need a pair of scissors. So if Nancy Verrier was talking about this, she would have the scissors in rock, paper, scissors as the metaphor for trauma. Yeah. But you and me know that rock beats scissors. Because
you
scissors
can't really cut a rock.
Because scissors can't cut a rock. Yeah. So I'm saying that the scissors are not the incorrect metaphor for trauma. A more accurate metaphor for trauma in this setup that we're talking about here is the paper. So the paper wraps the rock, and the paper wins until we unfurl the paper to reveal the rock that is untouched underneath that paper. Yeah. So Nancy Verrier, this doesn't work for a podcast, but I'm doing it. I'm doing this metaphorically. I'm using the rock, paper, scissors up to the camera because we're doing this on Zoom, right? So Nancy Verrier, she would say the scissors are the trauma, and I'm saying no, the paper is the trauma, and the paper wins until the paper is unfurled to relieve to reveal the rock that's underneath. So the essence of my message is that trauma hides us, it doesn't harm us. Trauma conceals us, it doesn't cut us.
Now, if we go back, just in case people don't know the whole idea of the primal wound, give us a brief explanation of that whole claim with the primal wound.
So Nancy Verrier, the author of the Primal Wound book, which was published in 1993, she was an American MD who later became a therapist. She had 2 adopted daughters, and she noticed big differences between those 2 daughters. So she had 1 biological daughter, 1 adopted daughter, and so she started she started researching the impact of relinquishment on children and came up with this idea of a primal wound, which is the notion that separation from our birth mothers does us big harm, causes big trauma, and it is lifelong, and it is about insecurity, not feeling that we fit in, those sorts of things.
Right.
Do you need any more detail on that? I mean,
no, except that people have really bought into this. They say, yeah, this is an acknowledgement of why I feel what I feel.
It is, yeah. And so some adoptees believe that it's true. So my own experience was a relief. Reading it, I thought this explains everything. And then my fast on the heels of that relief was a sense of doom. I thought, I'm stuck. I'm stuck with this primal wound. And then off the next kind of sensation, the big thing that came up for me is that who we truly are um, is unwoundable, and that was probably about 9 years ago. I got to that realization, and that realization is probably best summed up by the metaphor that I shared with you of rock paper scissors. It took me a long time to think of to come up with that, but it's not just me saying that that this is the case. A guy called Richard Schwartz, he's in his 70s. He's a lifelong therapist. He's the creator of internal family systems, and he talks about the uppercase S self, who we truly are, and that is his approach is a psycho-spiritual approach, which means it's got the psychological bit, psycho, and it's got the spiritual bit. Now, by spiritual, he doesn't mean religious, but he's talking about, by spirit, he's talking about identity, and what he calls the uppercase S. So there are Eckhart Tolle talks about presence. There are a few different people pointing towards this essential self of who we are, which nothing can touch. No life experience can touch. But I'm the only one, I think, maybe I'd need to do some more research, but I'm the only one kind of taking that truth and sharing it within the adoption space. Nobody else that I can that is talking about this in the sorts of way that I find, not that I've come across anyway.
And you correct me if you think that I'm off base here, but I'm thinking about this process that we go through in life as we're trying to understand ourselves better. And we have these experiences and we have these emotions that we're feeling, and we're trying to make sense of them. And why am I angry, or why do I feel this way? And so we're trying to make sense of them. And maybe we read a book like The Primal Wound and we go, yeah, that's why I feel like I feel. And we feel validated in our feelings, and that brings quite a sense of relief that, yeah, now I feel validated. And that makes it understandable. But with that relief comes a certain degree of helplessness that, okay, so that's why I am the way I am. But okay, well, I'm a victim of that. I feel helpless in the face of that. And so then we go on and we try to understand that a little bit more. And maybe then we start to come to the realization of, yeah, that may be true that I have felt this way, but that may not be the way I want to continue to feel. And so then we go into more of this, what you've talked about, this, but I still am who I am. I'm the rock. I'm the uppercase self. And I don't have to be determined by these external things. Am I getting what you're saying there?
100%.
And that's a journey. I mean, we all go through that process. I would worry that sometimes people maybe get stuck along that process someplace.
We do, yeah, we do. I mean, Richard Levine, who is another trauma therapist, specialist guy, a little bit like Richard Schwartz, has a different approach. He's a somatic guy. So his focus is on the rather than the beliefs of trauma. It's more to do with the embodied trauma. So the trauma that is in our tissues. People say that the issue is in the tissue, and they don't mean a paper towel. They mean our tissues, our body tissues. Yeah, And he says that trauma is a fact of life, but it's not a life sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is a fact of life, but it's not a life sentence. So what he's referring to there is the key, that that unlocks the door to our wholeness, and that would equate to what you were just saying about feeling stuck. He's talking about getting unstuck. The key to getting unstuck, and the key to getting unstuck is that that further work, that curiosity, and doing the work. People talk about doing the work. So one of the biggest things I've learned from adoptive parents, yourself included, is raising an adopted child isn't about fixing the kid. It's about growing our ability to not take that kid's trauma personally. It's about growth, right? And growth is, you're laughing, like, growth is doing the work. So getting unstuck, whether we're an adoptive parent or whether we're an adoptee, or whoever we are, we've got nothing to do with adoption whatsoever. Life growth is about doing the work, which means therapy, reading books, listening to podcasts, personal growth. And the key thing is seeing our wholeness. Now, what's really, really interesting about Nancy Verrier's work is she says that the primal wound is psychological and spiritual, and yet her follow-up book is purely psychological, pretty much. And a lot of other people will say spirit can't be wounded. So
that's the rock.
That's the rock. Yeah,
that's the rock.
That's the rock.
So we've in trying to move through this process, we again, we're trying to figure ourselves out. We're trying to understand who we are, and we latch on to something. I feel this way because, and we say I'm adopted, I was relinquished, or whatever.
Or I was raped, or I was anything. Yeah. So
right.
So the mind is a meaning. It's a meaning. The mind is a meaning making machine. So what my mind didn't make a meaning, didn't give any meaning to adoption young, right? So if we think about relinquishment trauma, we think of, I think of that, we've got dogs, right? I think of a dog's first night away from his or her mum, and I think of the pain, and I think of the anguish of the dog, and the
dog's whining
and the whining, crying, right? So that the dog doesn't think. The 5-week-old Simon didn't think. He didn't have words. Mm-hmm. He didn't have words. All he had was an experience. So at some point, the feeling of loss gets connected with a feeling of insecurity, or any. It gets connected back. It gets connected back to a life event, and that the meaning is then the link is created, and so the bondage begins until we have an insight of sufficient profundity that we unbreak the bond.
Right. And so as we see people going through this journey, there's truth in each step of it. There's truth in the loss. The loss happened. There's truth in the feeling of I'm not happy, I'm angry, I'm frustrated because I see that there was this loss. There's truth in the fact that that was trauma to me, that was a wound to me. And I actually, now understanding that, feel a little bit better because now I can make meaning of some of the struggles that I've been having. And then we go on a little bit further and we go, okay, but I don't really like the feeling that I'm now a victim to that I have no choices, that I'm stuck in this world that happened because of something that happened to me that I have no control over it. And quite honestly, I'm tired of being mad about it. And then we go to this next step and we say, okay, so who really am I? And how do we get to that place of, I am a rock? I don't have to be cut. I don't have to be smothered. I don't have to be that way. How do we get there?
Through an insight, an epiphany, an epiphanette, a shift in our perspective, a belief that's busted, a penny that drops, a new idea, seeing through a false belief. There's a bolt out of the blue, a new idea that comes to us in a quieter moment, a new idea that comes to us in a pit of despair, right? So I was in a pit of despair reading this letter from my birth mother. Mm-hmm. And in that pit of despair, I connected with her and I saw a new truth. And the truth was that she loved me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was the truth. So it was a new truth. It was a deeper truth. So how do we get the answer is on this stuff is always insight or a synonym for insight or a sinophore. I've come up with this word, right? It's a sinophore. So a synonym are two words that mean the same. A sinophore is two metaphors that mean the same. So a bolt out of the blue or a light bulb moment. These are all sinophores. These are all metaphors that point to the same thing. An old belief replaced by a new belief, or a profound epiphany, an experienced realization. So my realization was a kind of like that one was a full body experience, right? Right. It's not just a fleeting idea. It's a very profound, deep truth in the moment.
Thank you for listening to Voices of Adoption. I'm Donna Pope.
And I'm Nathan William. Every voice in the adoption triad deserves to be heard and understood.
Visit voicesofadoption.org to subscribe and access additional resources. And then join us next time as we continue to build bridges through conversation.